Hello, Year 10. Welcome to Lesson 7, I know, of the Living in Nazi Germany course. And we've done terror. I've gone through the answers in the previous video and buoyed by how that went and the idea that you don't really want to be sacked for an hour. Well, looking at me basically trying to perform behind a desk at home, which is so weird. I thought maybe I'd do a similar sort of thing today. I would take you through a lesson that is a little bit more interactive. Now, don't worry if you don't have a printer at home. The resources that have been set for you on Show My Homework merely require you to know which image you're putting where and which part of the propaganda process goes under which heading. I'll explain more in a moment. In the meantime, it's time to get going. And that means I do the bad YouTuber thing of looking down at my keyboard whilst I sort out the screen. I apologize, I can't see what I'm doing, and I'm not that good. I don't have the things. Anyway, here is an image from the 1930s. You can see it's from Life magazine. And it's a colour photograph because colour photographs existed in the 1930s. Can you tell me what this image is of? Where it was taken? I've already told you it was the 1930s. Where was it taken and how can you tell? If you're going to play the game properly, you're going to pause the video at this point, so pause. Okay, I'm going to assume you pause the video. We shall move on. This is clearly Berlin. We know it's Germany in the 1930s and we know it's after 1933. Furthermore, we know it's before the Second World War. There are several key features that make this plainly obvious. One, we know it's after 1933. The place is festooned in swastikas. And you've got that three-word phrase that you remember from, three-phrase thing that you remember from the lesson on Nazi ideology. Ein Volk, ein Reich, ein Führer. And know what that means now. The fatherland thanks the Führer with yes, it says up there. Then it also says Shop Osram, Die Lampen, whatever they are. And the druggery, druggery, is that a pharmacy? I think that's a pharmacy. But you get the idea, this is a normal street. And there's several interesting things going on here. We know it's after 1933, the Nazis are clearly in charge. We know it's before the Second World War because, well, look at it. It's well lit, undamaged. This is clearly not a nation at war. What is it celebrating? What's going on here? Well, there's clearly a show being put on. But for whom? Is it for the people in the photograph? The answer might be surprising. You might say this clearly shows propaganda, and it does. But propaganda for whom? At whom is it aimed? I don't think it's aimed at any of the people in the street here. Want to know why? None of them are looking at it. Look closely. Not a single person in this scene is stopping in wonderment to read all of these slogans and to see all the festooning flags. Rather, they're going about their daily business. This is for the photographer. I said it was from Life magazine. That is a United States-based magazine. This was for international onlookers. Why would international onlookers be in Germany? Why would they bother taking pictures? What were they doing it for? What possibly could be their purpose? To show people at home how great the Nazis were? That seems a little unlikely. I'll let you in on a secret. This is a photograph from 1936, the year that Germany hosted the Olympics. And therefore, it was on show to the entire world. And as a consequence, stuff like this was everywhere. It was showing off to the entire world. This is while the entire world is in a grip of a Great Depression. And Germany is showing off that not only is it out of the Depression, but the Nazis have done good things for Germany. You'll remember when we talked about Nazi ideology and fascism, I said that it was all image over substance. And this is an absolute picture, literally, of that. The image is far more important than anything that's actually going on in Germany under the Nazis. Do I need to click it again? I do. That'll pass into the background. Let's talk about the Nazis. Joseph Goebbels is known for two big statements, one of which you might have noticed at the beginning of this video behind my head, but the other one is this. It is not enough for people to be more or less reconciled to our regime, to be persuaded to adopt a neutral attitude towards us. Rather, we want to work on people until they have capitulated to us, until they grasp ideologically that what is happening in Germany today not only must be accepted, but also can be accepted. Okay, that's an interesting statement. You'll need some translating words, and usually I get people to look them up in a dictionary. you still can. Google has dictionaries. You can look up the meanings of the following words. What does capitulated mean? If you want to play along, pause the video. I'm going to assume you pause and come up with a definition. I shall pretend like I've listened. Yes, that sounds like the right answer. It actually means surrendered completely, given in, totally caved in, totally without resistance. They've capitulated. Until they grasp ideologically, look at the word, pause. Yeah, it means about the way in which you view the world, ideas about ideas, so that the lens through which you view the world, the way in which you interpret what goes on around you is ideological. So what this means is what? Can you translate it into a 6-word phrase? It might be more than 6. Oh, if you're playing, pause. Okay, I'm going to assume you paused. I'm sure you came up with things and then realized that my 6-word phrase statement was actually a misspeak because it's not 6 words, is it? But I'll give you what I'm thinking. This can be translated to Goebbels' aim for propaganda. He wants 100% of people in Germany, 100% of the time, to be 100% on the side of the Nazis. That sounds like a standard aim for most dictatorial regimes and sounds like it's not too stupid. I mean, it's terrifying, but not too stupid. Oh, hang on, I've turned my video off. Back on. But it is actually really weird and almost impossible. Consider, you're in school, and even now, and you're at home now, and you are broadly speaking on board with your own education. You are broadly speaking on board with the whole idea of uniform. You are broadly speaking on board with doing history because at the end of the day, you chose it. All right, it might have been a Hobson's choice between two subjects you disliked, but you still chose it. And you generally like the school, I think. Many of you will probably be missing it right now. And yet I'll tell you this, when it comes to a fire drill and you are asked to line up in silence, you don't. Not even in a straight line. When you're asked to line up outside classrooms, you don't. Not even close. When you're asked to stand behind your desk before the start of a lesson and stand quietly, you don't. Now, why is that? If you're so supportive of all those things, and you kind of are, why don't you do it? Well, the answer is no one's 100% of the time 100% on side with anything, not even if you love it. Goebbels has set himself an impossible task. And you might ask the question, well, why? Why set yourself an impossible task? Well, the answer is actually on the wall behind me. It comes down to another one of his stock phrases. Repeat a lie often enough and it'll become the truth. If you tell people they're 100% of the time 100% on side, and 100% of the people are on side, and you repeat it often enough, people will come to believe it. The repetition of phrases is important. It makes a huge difference. People begin to internalize the message. They begin to believe that the message is what they believe too. So Goebbels may have set himself an impossible task. What's scary is not that he set himself this impossible task, rather what's frightening, truly frightening, is that he nearly succeeded. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about propaganda. Here I have some film stills. They're both taken from films, and I was looking on YouTube to see if I could find the one I wanted to show you. However, it's internationally banned. You can buy it on DVD. I have 2 copies. They're in school, unfortunately, so I'll have to sort that out at some point. So I can't show you the clip today, but I will get onto that, and I'll see if I can get hold of the DVD from school again, and then I'll play it over one of these, hopefully with better quality than my attempt of trying to do that music and images at the beginning, though it does tend to do better with video when it's all laced together. Can you tell me what they're films of? Pause. I'm assuming you've unpaused. The top one is from Leni Riefenstahl's Olympia, and that was the sort of souvenir film of the 1936 Olympics. It's the opening ceremony here, and all right, it's a bit weird. You're like, oh, it's in black and white. But to be fair, this was an astonishing achievement of German propaganda, Nazi propaganda in particular. The bottom still, do you know what it's from? Pause. Those who got it right, well done. This is from Leni Riefenstahl's film, The Triumph of the Will, Triumph des Willens. And this is from a scene that I would show you where Hitler's giving a speech. I've mentioned it before about Hess being totally weird about it. But like I say, I'll have to pick up the DVD from school the next time I'm in, and I'll play it to you that way. That, by the way, won't be until the 1st of June. Maybe we'll all be back then. Who knows? That's my only political comment about today's world. But you get a feel for how good this propaganda is. Now, all right, you're looking like, oh, well, it's black and white, isn't it? But you look at what the crowd's doing, you look at the situation in that room, and you get a feel for what the Nazis were able to put on as a show. Imagine yourself being in that room, this huge hall filled with people saying Sieg Heil, with all of that going on. It's very hard not to get drawn in. For those of you that remember the Nazi lesson from year 9, I didn't do half of that. I had a couple of posters and a flag, maybe 2, and I was able to draw most people in. Now imagine that for several days in that kind of hall, and, well, you can see for yourself. So that's Olympia, 1936, the Triumph of the Will, 1934. Here are 2 other images of propaganda. Do you know what these are? I'll do both this time, so pause and come up with an answer to both. I'm going to assume you've unpaused and you've come up with an answer to both. The first one is a film still from a film that is about, well, someone who is mentally ill and all the problems he causes without meaning to. He is the main character, and he's called Erbklanker. Why Erbklanker? Because Erbklanker is a derogatory term for the mentally ill. Ah, I see. That was a film released in 1934, prefiguring something called Aktion T4, which was, or T4, I suppose, which was the Nazi program of voluntary mercy killings of people that were mentally ill. The bottom one is a film poster from The Eternal Jew, which I think I've shown you already, or a film poster for that, when we were talking about their racism in Nazi ideology. Go back and have a look if you don't remember. And this was released in 1940. It's a ridiculously stupid film. A German household on a farm. There are Jews conspiring to take it over. They try more and more progressively weird things over a period of history. And the film culminates with an army of Jews trying to take this farm forcibly from a family that have lived in there for generations. And then the Nazis turn up and kill all the Jews and everything's fine. It really is that stupid. And the question we're going to be asking with all this is, what was Nazi propaganda actually like? And I believe it can be summed up in a few words. It is invasive. It is insidious. Invasive means it's everywhere. Insidious means it sneaks in around the sides. It draws you in without realizing that's what you're doing. And I will come back to that photograph in a moment. And the last word is ubiquitous. You can't escape it. So what is it like? All of you, I'm hoping by the end of the session, will be able to identify the main themes of Nazi propaganda. I believe there are 4, and describe how they are shown in source material. So if anything turns up, you can infer. Spot on. Most of you will be able to link sources together to show different themes within Nazi propaganda and link these to what the Nazis wanted. So if it turns up in a question 7, for example, we've only done up to question 6 so far, where you've got 3 sources to look through, you'll know what the themes are within those sources, be able to link them together to make a joined up narrative about what those sources show and what makes them useful or not useful, and link them to what the Nazis wanted, which is to infer further and explain what they mean and why they're used. Some of you will go further and be able to use source material on Nazi propaganda to link source material to how the Nazis controlled Germany, i.e. you'll be able to explain to me how it was that propaganda was used by the Nazis to keep control. The main task, it says in pairs, and again, if you can rope a parent into this or a sibling, go for it. Torture everybody in your household. If you can't, I guess you have to do it on your own. I'm going to give you a document that goes along with this PowerPoint on the Show My Homework, and it will be called propaganda cards or something like that. And you're going to take the sources on that, and the idea in the lesson will be you cut them out, and then, you know how I love cutting sticks, and move them into a grid to show 4 main themes of Nazi propaganda. If you don't have a printer, then I guess you number them in your head. I don't need to know the numbers. And then you draw the numbers where they need to go. And If you can link that to the electronic document, that'd be fantastic. Maybe take a picture of it. That will absolutely work from a computer screen. For now, we can always replace it with paper in the future. If you can print it out, that'll be absolutely ace, and it'll so save you time later on, but don't worry if you can't. So put them into the 4 categories, and then take it further. What was it that the Nazis wanted from their people, and how did they try to achieve it with propaganda? So you're going to work out what the themes are, there's 4. And from those themes, can you work out what it was the Nazis wanted? What did they want to achieve with these themes? And how is the propaganda showing the people of Germany how the Nazis are going to do this? It says be prepared to share your themes, because I'm not going to tell you what they are until afterwards. If you're playing this game properly, have a go first. If you get it wrong, please don't worry, I will explain afterwards. So don't stick anything down until you finish the video, and that's fine. This can take much longer than an hour. If you want to take a couple of, like, half an hour or even 20-minute gaps over a period of days, please feel free. The point of these lessons is to try and support your learning. It's not there to pressure you. Use this as a sort of break task from all the other work you'll be getting set each week. I understand, don't worry. In a lesson, you'd have 10 minutes to do this. Now, obviously, I can't police that at home. If you need to take longer, take longer. There's no time pressure. So, here's my grid. Good luck, and pause the video. I'm going to assume you finished pausing the video. I'm going to assume you spent 10 or 15 or 20 or half an hour, I don't know, working with those sources, cutting and then putting them into the 4 grids and working out what might join them together, because I didn't tell you what the headings were. So hopefully you have an idea about what those 4 themes were. Let's go back to that screen and find out what my 4 themes were. They're not the right answer, they're just my answer. Some of you may prefer to change your answer. Some of you may go, no, it's close enough to mine, I'll stick with mine. And that is fine. The joy of history at this level is you get to decide what works, and I'm happy with that one. The 4 I came up with were the Führerprinzip, the idea of strong leadership. And I've spelled that wrong, that should be a Z, not a C, and I apologize. Youth, women, and the family. I should take my fizzog away because I'm in the way. Hold on. Go away. Thank you. Youth, women, and the family. And stuff to do with the Nazi message on what family values were and the importance of youth. We talked about that with their idea. Oh, have we talked about that yet? We will talk about that. Oops. Next one is war. War. Krieg. Auf Deutsch. Krieg. So obviously there's a big military aspect to this. And the final one is anti-Semitism and racial politics. Now then, if your 4 themes don't really match those and you're utterly confused, now you're going, oh, well, why didn't you just say? Okay, fine. You can pause the video, rearrange what you've got. There are no right answers. Ideally, in a lesson, we talk about where you've put them and why. And if you can support it, it will always work. But if you're going to play the game properly, pause the video at this point and rearrange your sources under these headings. So, pause. I'll keep doing this. I'm going to assume that you've unpaused and that you're ready to discuss these. Now, most of these are blindingly obvious. Did you spot any that went in more than one heading? Because you should have done. They will be difficult to categorize. You'll be looking at, well, it could go in either, it could go in 3, some of them might even go in 4. That is perfectly acceptable. You might find a couple that don't fit in any, and that's also perfectly acceptable. It doesn't matter which ones they are, provided you know why you found them difficult, because they're the most interesting of all. And as a good historian, you'll have a reason why they can go in more than one place. Remember, the whole point of history is to explain and support your answer. So using phrases like this meant that, or therefore, will allow you, it won't force you to make an explanation. It doesn't magic, it's not like a magic spell. I've said the words, this meant that, this is now explanation. It just means that it's more likely that what follows is explanatory rather than descriptive. And basically what you're trying to do is avoid description. That's what we're trying to achieve here. So if you can explain why you've done what you've done with this meant that, or therefore, or similar. My favorite actually is thus. It's an old Latin word, it's 4 letters and it means in this way. And what more could you ask for? A 4-letter word doing the work of 3 words? Yeah. And this will allow you to make an explanation. So don't worry about the answers being exactly correct. There's a reason that I've left this entirely open-ended. As long as you've got a good explanation. This is where, if you haven't already, bringing in a parent or a sibling or someone you just want to bore stupid and explaining your answers to them so that they understand why you've done it is really, really helpful. So be discursive about it. It doesn't have to be set down. I don't know, force them over tea. Force them when they say, oh, I want to spend time with you, and you just want revenge. Sorry, I mean, you want to involve them in your education. Then do share it with them and explain why you've done what you've done. And if they understand it, you win. Even better, bonus points if it's someone that doesn't understand history. Because then you really win. If you can get them to understand what you've done, you are winning. And I don't mean in a Charlie Sheen sense, which is a joke that many of you won't get now, and I apologise. Anyway, back to this. So that's the meat of the lesson, really. In a lesson itself, this would have been about half. Then we have a follow-up task. And again, it says in pairs, and if you, again, I say again, work on your own if you like, or you know, have your revenge. Using those same sources, can you categorize sources into 4 main methods of propaganda? So don't stick them down yet. We've done 4 main areas, the things that they show. Okay, what about methods? How is the propaganda taking place? Or if you prefer, how did the Nazis try to get people to believe what they wanted them to believe? You should be able to find 4 ways in which they did it. Be prepared to share your methods. Again, that's really hard. I don't know what you do about that one. Share them with your family. In a lesson, you'd have 10 minutes. You can take as long as you like. It's the same grid because there's 4 areas, and you can pause the video to do this. So, pause. Okay, I'm going to assume you paused while I fiddle with the screen there, and that you've done the test for about 10 or 15 minutes. You should have got 4 methods you think make sense. Have a go at explaining to someone else, make sure they make sense to that person, and now I'm going to share my answers. Now, in this one, I'm afraid these answers, well, while not being entirely definitive, are certainly more strict than those first 4 that I showed you about what these things were about. So bear with me whilst I go through them, assuming it works. Oh no, I haven't left the answer here. The point is that there are multiple methods that you can bring in here. You could go with radio, which is the audio. You could go with video, architecture, and posters. Or you could go with physical displays. There's plenty of photographs in there. Propaganda posters. Again, that still works. The media. And this I'm referring to newspapers and radio and film all in one. And race. There's a lot of race in there. That is both a method and kind of a theme. Yeah, there's multiple ways you could look at this. Oh, so final thing, in your books, use the 2 posters you have been given. Now, again, they'll be separate. They'll come at the end of this PowerPoint when you find it. And I'll show you them in a moment. And label them to show their similarities in how the Nazis use propaganda. So what I'd like you to do, if you can, print them off, stick them in your book. If you can't, I don't know, draw a reasonable facsimile. I'm not suggesting you have to do it artistically, just like, oh, here's a blob for a head, and this box here is where the words are. Something like that, so you know roughly what you're labeling. You'll see why in a moment. Think about how they've arranged their poster, where the slogan is and how they phrase it, who the people are and how they are shown, and be as detailed as you can. In a lesson, this would take about 10 minutes. You can take as long as you want, but don't pause yet. These are the 2 posters, okay? Now, toward the end of this PowerPoint, they'll appear separately, so you can print them off, cut them out, stick them in your book. As I say, you don't have to draw them exactly if you can't print them off, but some kind of reasonable facsimile. So, now you know what the task is. Can you label these for their similarities? I'm going to ask you to pause. I'm going to assume you paused and have had a go. Let's talk these through. First and foremost, they both have the main message up here at the top. This one's in the top left. Die NSDAP sichert die Volksgemeinschaft. You don't have to know what that means in German. You just need to know that's the message. Here we have another message, Winterhilfswerk. This is a Nazi charity that used to well, it's called winter help work. And the idea was it helped people out who couldn't afford to eat in the Depression by people holding one-pot suppers. So anything you saved in that meal, you donated to the Winterhilfswerk. This one, by the way, says the National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP, serves the Volksgemeinschaft, the people's community. The next thing it does is it's got a representation of the state. It's got a representation of the government led by the Nazis, in particular Hitler, watching over the family. In this one here, it's a German eagle with its head looking this way and with its wings out. It's not a terribly important thing, but you know it's there. In this one, the eagle is right there with a protective wing around them. And you might not have noticed, or maybe you have, I don't know, but it's quite subtle, that its wings are enfolding the family. Very clever. The next thing is you've got a family in the middle, and this is the perfect Nazi family in both cases. For one, well, you probably guessed the racial angle. They're all blonde-haired and blue-eyed. Obviously, they're racially perfect. They're the Herrenvolk. You'll also notice that the highest person in each is the male. He's the most important. He's supposed to be the wage earner, the patriarchal person in charge. That's a standard thing in art. The higher the person, the more important they are. It's a general thing. It's one of those sort of artistic vocabularies. My apologies if you're an artist and you're doing an art GCSE and you already know this, but that's how paintings, posters, and most compositions work, even in photographs. The next thing you'll notice is that they have more than 2 children, and that's deliberate. It's this idea of an expanding family. We talked about Lebensraum, with the idea of expansion and stealing more land. Germany's population was supposed to get bigger, and you do this by having more than 2 children, because that way when the parents die, the children replace you. And if you only have 2, then you've replaced 2 with 2. If you have more than 2, you've got a growing population. Less than 2, and you've got a smaller population, a declining population, if you will. So that's what the Nazis are trying to impress here. The next thing you need to know is this idea that the family looks inwards. The family looks after its own. That's the whole point. And here you've got that same message. This one's got a scary child going, oh, look, you could be one of us too. Whereas in this one, you've got 2 dead-faced boys fixing you with suspicious glares. Come any closer and I'll shiv you, because they protect their family. The father, by the way, is going, yes, I have trained my boys in the art of knife combat. Come no closer. Probably with a deeper voice than I can manage. But in both cases, you've got an inward-looking family. So it's not just a family, it's not just a racially pure family, it's an inward-looking family. The bit at the bottom is a fairly long piece of text in both cases. Now, you don't have to know the German. The point is, this is the explanation of what the post is all about, keeping it simple. Modern advertising techniques and advertising slogans do exactly the same thing. You may well have noticed this on TV adverts and on hoardings at bus stops, for example. This one, it says, Volksgenossen, I think that's something to do with people's knowledge, needs your help and Rat, service and help. So get yourself and join the Ortsgruppe. Remember the Ortsgruppen from the terror slide, and the idea that that was a way of joining in and basically helping the Nazi terror state work. In this one, it says, Ein Volk hilft sich selbst. A people helps itself. Hence the suspicious glares. And these things happen, they fly under the radar. I don't know whether you noticed all of that straight off. Also, notice the Zed pattern and how your eyes work. You always read left to right. So you've trained yourself to look at things from left to right. You've also trained yourself through reading to look at things from top to bottom. Notice you've got a Zed pattern here that the eyes are drawn on. That's the journey your eyes go when you're looking at the poster. Now, the Z pattern, you can't really do much with that in an exam. I'm just pointing it out. It's an interesting aside. Here you've got the Z pattern again. In both cases, if you look at the composition of the people in the middle, that is designed to draw your eye down. In this one, you've got the woman literally looking down along the Z pattern onto the baby's face, which also draws the eye. Whoops, a daisy. Also draws the eye, and then across there to read the slogan at the bottom back to this girl's face here. On this one, it's slightly more subtle, but you've still got that Z. You draw it across there with the Winterhilfswerk. You come down, you wonder what the woman's looking at. Oh, look, it's a baby. You go back to the child because what's that child doing there? And then you down onto here and across that bit again. They're both essentially a Z. Now, the Z thing, I just find that fascinating. It will never help you in an exam, and I do apologise, but it does explain how the posters work. Oh yeah, so that, I've broken it. Sorry, that takes us through the first lesson on propaganda. Apologies for the technical hitches at the end there. I did warn you that these were technically difficult to produce. I'm struggling a bit. I'm a history teacher. I don't do technology. So that's the first bit. That's the first lesson on propaganda. Clearly, we're going to need more input on that. Clearly, I'm going to have to go into a bit more detail so you can actually use what you have learned. But hopefully, that was a more interesting way of doing things and didn't trap you in front of a computer for a full hour, because that would be depressing. So I hope that was useful. Do let me know if it isn't. Stay safe. Stay at home, regardless of government guidelines. And I will see you in the next lesson, or rather you'll see me in the next lesson. My apologies to my form, who've heard that way too often. And yeah, have a lovely day, Year 10. Thank you very much.